Welcome back to Wired for Change, where we explore the ideas, people, and technologies that are reshaping our world. I'm your host, Amy Yee. We talk a lot on this show about how organizations can adapt, but AI is changing the rules of adaptation itself. It's accelerating decision cycles, rewriting job roles, and shifting power dynamics faster than many systems and most people can absorb. Today's guest is on the leading edge of that space. She's laying down the frameworks for how to lead and operate in an AI era. She challenges us to look at not just how we manage change, but what change management should become. Please help me to welcome Nikki Barua to the show. She is someone who is all the things that I would love to be when I grow up: a transformation strategist, serial entrepreneur, best-selling author. Nikki, did I leave anything off? I feel like there are so many
Keynote
things. A
speaker.
keynote speaker, thank you, and a podcaster yourself as well, Nikki. I'm so happy to have you here, and I know that you've had a 25-year career that of helping global organizations to really reinvent their culture and their capabilities, and it's a really exciting place to be, Nikki. So thank you so much for joining us on Wired for Change.
Thanks for having me, Amy. I'm thrilled to be here.
Excellent. So let's start off with a little bit about your journey and what led you to the place that you're at now with respect to helping to lead the change with respect to AI in so many organizations.
Well, I think the through line of my entire life and career has been all about change. When I was a little girl growing up in India, my dad kept getting relocated for work. So every 2 or 3 years, I'd find myself in a completely different environment, new city, new school, new neighborhood. And there was the only constant I knew was about adapting because it was a path to survival. And then at the age of 21, I left my hometown and made it to America with all of my big dreams and no resources, no relationships, no access. And the only thing I knew again, the path to survival, was adapting to change quickly. And that was pretty much kind of how my corporate career evolved as well, starting out in strategy and innovation. So much of my work was about helping companies adapt to the new way, the next technological revolution, the next disruption that was out there. But there was something else that I noticed is that as much as leaders and companies recognize that change is inevitable and that they need to adapt, there's a subconscious resistance that is often not fully embraced and understood. And that causes the slow adoption curve, a slow change management that actually takes away the full value of adapting to change. And so for me, having started off in technology early in my career, I saw the power of really blending, the power of technology with the beauty of the human mind. And when you can find the right framework that helps people embrace that change and get excited about it and figure out a way where they can thrive and they can succeed, it not only transforms their life and possibilities, but that's what really helps organizations evolve faster too. And that's really how I built my career in making elephants run, helping the world's largest companies adapt quickly and innovate faster and bring their people and culture into the next era in that process.
That's amazing. I like the visual around making elephants run. So you can make elephants run.
Well, look, every big company, they don't have a shortage of resources. They have the best talent, the biggest budgets, all of the resources and access that they want. Then why is it that they don't innovate as fast as startups do? Because you have to look at the fundamental building blocks as the very things that give them so much mass is what stamps velocity. And so if you want momentum, you have to figure out the things that increase velocity, because even a small increase in velocity with that large mass can lead to increased momentum. And that's how elephants run. And it's really about figuring out those small changes in your culture, in your people, in your norms, in the way technology gets adopted. When you're able to institutionalize that change at large scale, you can have massive market domination.
Absolutely. And it's something that's not easy to do. And so to a point that you touched on earlier around, these large organizations wanting to run faster, it's not as easy as often that they hope that it is, right? What are some of those, blind spots that organizations can have when they're looking at, how do we run fast? How do we get, adoption, and thinking that maybe it's more of a technical issue than it actually is?
Well, we're seeing it in happen in real time right now. AI is the greatest disruption in modern human history. And what we're already seeing is all of these companies kind of going through a strange kind of FOMO.
Hmm.
There's this
Yes.
shiny object syndrome of, oh my God, AI is here. I got to, we must embrace AI. And so the reaction is, let's sign up for the next tool or the next AI tool subscription model, anything that we can get our hands on. And the assumption is that if we simply have the technology, that we will have shifted from a legacy company to an AI native company. The thing that's completely forgotten in that context is that AI is changing work faster than people can change how they work. And so it doesn't matter if your entire tech stack is different. It doesn't matter if you have access to the most cutting edge AI tools and LLMs. If people don't shift how they work, it doesn't get adopted. And that's what we're seeing out there, is that 95% are not getting the ROI from their investments. And it's the human side of AI that gets completely missed out on. And it's not enough to simply motivate employees to say, you need to adopt AI. It's really creating the right environment in which that reinvention becomes possible.
Hmm. And it's not as easy as, what I hear often is don't be afraid, just try it, just jump in, just try it. I'm
Yeah.
not sure it's as easy as just saying don't be afraid of it either.
No, it's not. In fact, one of the examples that I can share is a very, very large company, one of the world's largest companies, kind of went down this path of saying, we're all in, we're committing to AI. And their approach to that was saying, let's assign it a big budget. Let's create a Skunkworks team with 150 of our most talented people and put them in this on this team to pilot AI and to try things with AI. The problem was there were no guardrails. There was no clear business objective. There were no metrics. There was absolutely no outcome that was defined. And so months of people, time, effort, budgets invested into this, they failed to get anything concrete out of that. Well, the net result was that people started to question, is there any real value to AI? The executive and the CEO started to question, well, I don't know, is this a distraction? Should we really be doing it? So the very reason they set out to do it had the negative effect of losing the buy-in and losing the belief, because the structure of this experimentation had no guardrails. Not to mention that it led to security issues, a
Hmm.
tech stack getting completely violated, a lot of failed experimentation. So simply saying AI is here, everybody's got to jump onto it, go do whatever you want, is not the right way for any organization to deploy that. I think there has to be, first of all, the fundamentals never change. You got to think about, where can you leverage this to get the greatest benefit? Where can you apply it to get the right kind of returns? Where can you augment your talent? Where can you release capacity to do high level, high value work? And then what is the structure within which you will enable that? What does that look like? What are the do's and don'ts? What is the tech stack and the security guidelines within which people have to operate? If you define that effectively, like any change management program, then you will start to see results that then compound over time and start to build momentum in the organization. You fail to do that, you could end up with an absolute horrific scenario of unable to put the Pandora back into a box.
Absolutely. I think I love that example that you gave around, I mean, there's a cost to to doing all of this and to the psychology of the organization once they've gone through this huge kind of
Yeah.
push to try to do something, anything. I remember earlier in the spring, I was at a board education session where, and vendors are great for helping you to get to where you want to go, but there were a lot of vendors kind of presenting to board members saying that you guys have to just try something, and I just try
Yeah.
anything. And it is in the vendor's best interest to have you try things and to do things. But my sort of thought to the room was really like, don't just do it for the sake of doing something, to your point about
Yeah.
FOMO earlier, because everyone feels like, and then if a board member says it too, right? You feel like as the CEO, as an executive team, okay, well, we've got to rush out and do something. The board thinks that we need to do something. So there are lots of nuances to how to set this up, for success. I think that you're bringing to light. I think when we think about change management, I wonder, like, if you agree on this as well, like traditional change management methods like ADKAR and Kotter's 8 steps, for example,
Mhm.
maybe they were built for more of a structured or predictable change, although there are always unpredictable things when it comes to
Mhm.
change. Do you think that, we need new ways of looking at change management? Because with AI, it's just, to what you said, it feels like it's moving so fast. It's more like a living, breathing organism than it is
Mhm.
anything that you can set down on paper and be really prescriptive about. What do you think about that?
Well, I'm going to say the thing that I think every change management leader and consultant and expert probably knows deep within, which is change management needs to change. So, the old school approach was designed for a fundamentally different era and a different culture and a different speed and scale of disruption. And today, that just doesn't work when you have something that's episodic versus continuous, when you have something that is really shifting process, but not shifting identity. When it is often top down or driven by leadership versus emerging not only bottom up, but from inside out. How do you drive that change from within a person? And then also thinking about the role of change agents within any organization was always important, but it's not enough to just have a few. How do you create a culture of change agents where everybody is that? So there's so many things that fundamentally need to shift that are able to create that kind of agile and adaptive environment where an organization can actually navigate this level of uncertainty, this level of rapid change, and is able to innovate from within it. So, structural changes that traditional change management did has to become continuous reinvention. There is no start and end date. There is no program that begins and is successfully completed. You really have to stir that kind of reinvention model within every person, within every organization, and recognize that it isn't going to have necessarily just a successful outcome or a specific metric. It's how it leaves a mark that is far lasting than any traditional programs can provide.
Hmm. That's a lot.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah,
Um,
it really is.
right, so when you think about that, I mean, I think as humans, I think many of us are conditioned to feel more comfortable when they're kind of more set, sort of structured around things. Some people are very comfortable with ambiguity,
Yeah.
as well in that. How do you deal with the psychological and emotional impacts of, like, that shifting sense of control or that ambiguity?
Well, what you pointed out is exactly what the challenge is. It's a lot. It's a lot going on right now, externally, internally. The fear of replacement, the sense of loss of relevancy, of value, of even identity in some ways. The playbook that got you here
Mhm.
suddenly becomes obsolete. Well, how do you figure out what's next? No matter what your role is, or even how high up you are in leadership, there's an element of feeling a level of inertia almost, because when everything is moving that fast, you're sort of like, I don't even know where to begin. I don't know where to focus. And I'm supposed to be the one in charge, giving people direction. So I've had so many conversations with very senior executive leaders that are, um, on one hand, holding on to an old playbook because that was their source of power, status, relevancy. And on the other hand, recognizing that something needs to shift, but they don't even know where to begin. And the starting point of all of this is recognizing that for the first time, we all have a blank canvas to paint our masterpiece because we have unlimited tools and unlimited intelligence at our disposal. But what has to come from within is that humility to be willing to let go of whatever got you here, and the curiosity to explore what is next, and the student mindset, the learner's mindset of willing to constantly learn new things. And I think with that mindset, we can find our way into amplifying our greatest traits, our uniquely human traits, and using AI to amplify that and build something from a foundation that makes us relevant again.
Thanks for that. I can see that leadership is going to be very important here, to cultivate the right environment for those changes in behavior and to be able to get it wrong, sometimes as well. Do you have any examples, I guess, of what that kind of leadership looks like? And, or, contrasting with cultural resistance and recognizing like what that looks like and how to lead, through that.
Yeah. Well, one theme that has emerged a lot from guiding organizations and leaders lately is uh, executives are waiting for someone else to be the first.
Mm,
And when it comes to
mhm,
AI, it's sort of like, well, whose job is it
mhm,
to do this? Whose camp does it fall into? And this is not an IT problem. If you think this is IT's responsibility, you're thinking about it completely wrong. It certainly needs to be championed by the CEO, supported by the board. But within that, rather than wait for someone else to take the first step, the most important leadership trait is lead by example. Don't make it about a departmental responsibility. Lead by example by even sharing things like, I don't know where to begin. This is scary for me too. Show the vulnerability that we are all in uncharted territory. And the best we can do is show our humanity and show examples of how we are learning, by showing that, hey, I may have been an expert in this field, but everything's changing and I too am learning. This is day one for me too. Encourage your teams to experiment, to share their learnings, to have weekly wins. And I believe in like doing weekly experiments of take on something that you can like prove as an example, and every week have teams experiment and showcase their wins, because it starts to build this culture of experimentation, and it starts to build this culture of risk taking and celebrating failure in shorter and shorter sprints that then has an impact on the pace of your cultural operations, right? But that's what leaders need to be doing, is stop waiting for someone else to turn on the green light. Stop waiting for someone else to give people permission. Be the one that is stepping out first, because that's what leadership is ultimately about.
Do you think within an organization that has, like where every leader has their goals, for example, would it be easier for them to understand if everybody had a goal of some kind to define around, trying to push this forward and to move this forward? Because this is kind of the way people think about goals today. Would that be one way to
Mhm.
sort of bridge to this new reality? Because we all think in terms of, unfortunately, silos and accountability. Like, what is it that I'm
Right.
going to be measured on or responsible for? Is that one way to do this?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, incentives drive behavior, and one of the tools in every organization is things like performance reviews, and what the expectations of performance are. Make that part of your culture. Make that part of your expectations for every person, because if that's a foundational expectation, then that's exactly what you're going to start to get. But also be sure to put guardrails around it, because unlike other technologies or other things, here's something that is propagating so fast and can also have dangerous consequences, especially in industries that are heavily regulated or have compliance requirements. It can be very dangerous to just encourage this and build this
Throw everything
into,
else out.
uh, yeah, and suddenly you get exactly what you wish for, that everybody's, an experimenter and a pioneer, and now you have no way to control what's out there. So be sure to have guardrails in that. But the more you build it into the expectations and the incentives, the faster you're going to see that change come to life. But I also think a lot of people have adopted AI in their personal lives, right? I mean, most people at this point feel like, oh, if I can prompt ChatGPT, I already know AI. Well, that's only a small portion of what the real capabilities of AI are. And so it's important that you don't mistake enthusiasm from people as the actual competency development and the AI native skills that are necessary for your company to be successful. So as a leader, leverage that enthusiasm, but also direct it and channel it in the right way that you can get the kind of transformation that is necessary to succeed.
Oh, I really like that because a lot of people, are very enthusiastic because maybe they use ChatGPT in their personal life and they feel like, well, they're ready.
Yeah. Exactly. Like I
Well,
can use it to like answer anything. I think I know AI, which is a good thing
yeah.
because it's sort of democratized. It's taken away the fear and it's democratized access, and it's wonderful to do that. But that's just the beginning. That there's so much more to it, and there's so many more complex things that particularly touch every single business function, every single level of people. And what are those consequences, and how do you intentionally shape it to be successful? That's what the leaders have to focus on driving.
Hmm. I just wanted to ask, what is one example of what you would consider a more kind of mature sort of capability with respect to AI that, an organization might want to nurture?
Well, it's still early in that I can't say that I've necessarily seen a lot of
Mhm.
examples of maturity in place right now, but being able to help people think of their own workflow,
Mhm.
the everyday workflow, because the reality is in any decent sized organization, the C-suite executives have no idea what's happening on the ground in every individual's sort of day to day.
Mhm.
And the real opportunities aren't just at the 50,000-foot level of deploying this large scale tech platform or AI platform and driving that change. The real opportunity is, how do you reinvent every single person's workflow and how they reimagine their work? If an individual is empowered to rethink that, and that releases 50% of their capacity that could be deployed into higher value work. Now, suddenly, you have doubled your entire company's capacity without a single headcount added.
Mhm.
That is massive potential. That's massive performance increase and profitability that is at your fingertips. And there's no technology required for that. That is literally empowering the individuals to, rethink how they work. And although it's easier said than done, because every day when people come to work, there's already a sense of, oh my gosh, I've got so much to do. To say, I'm going to do my day job and I'm going to reimagine it, that's quite a bit. So that's the inherent tension in that. But if that were possible, that's really where the maturity of the organization goes to the next level, because then anything becomes possible. You are able to identify the innovations, you're able to, increase your productivity and performance, and you're able to build an agile culture all from one single source.
And I don't know if you found this, Nikki, but in organizations that have been around for a long time, even unpacking like the current state of those workflows, to your point, can be a challenge because sometimes either people don't know what they are or they don't really want to talk about them, or they don't feel safe to talk about them because maybe they've had to do some manual workarounds and or maybe they're doing things in order to get things to move forward that might not be entirely like approved, right? Even getting to that first step of feeling safe to unpack everything and understanding why it's important to unpack everything, and that the end result isn't going to be that you're not going to have a job at the end of the day necessarily, then that it's about higher value work. can be quite an exercise for organizations. Is that something you've
Yeah,
seen? Yeah.
absolutely. And for those of us that have been in the business of change management and transformation, how often have you come across those kind of scenarios where you're helping a client kind of, reinvent sort of like the old way of doing things to the new way? And you look at the old way and you're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this.
Yeah.
I can't believe this is how it was, it's all paper clips and binders in the back, and it's fascinating to think about how much advanced work and scale exists with those kind of operations in the back end. So that's just the reality for most companies on the planet. But the difference now is that you don't need an army of experts to come in and say, hey, this was your old way. Here's a better way. Here's the gap analysis. Here's how you can, how I'll train you to go from point A to point B. The difference is now that can be self-service. That can be change, that the individual is empowered to reimagine for themselves if you simply give them the right frameworks and the right tools and the environment of support that allows them to do that, because only they know what they do every day. Some of it is frankly kind of invisible even to their colleagues or their bosses. They know how they get the work done, and shifting that, helping them shift the mindset to go from labor to leverage, and to see that not as a threat of replacement, but as a path to not only moving to higher value work, but amplifying what makes them uniquely valuable. That's where the real work, the inner work comes about, is when you create that psychological safety of saying, this is actually the pathway for you having a better life and having, higher value, and for you having more leverage. And you have the ability to figure out exactly how to get there. That is where the speed of that change management, the speed of that transformation, and the depth of that transformation can be massive. And that's really what Flipwork was built for exactly that kind of things, to empower individual.
Amazing. Okay, I'm going to ask you about Flipwork in just a second. But before we do that, I do want to ask a question about some of the foundational principles that you're thinking about. So if I was, if we were to reinvent kind of the change management playbook, right? For this new age and the new challenges that we are being faced with now. We've talked about a few shifts during the course of the show, and just now you mentioned from labor to leverage, which I love. And that's probably one of the foundational principles that you're thinking of. What are some others that you're thinking about in your approach?
Three ways are really fundamental to the AI age specifically. Number one is you have to shift identity. No change is possible right now without people fundamentally being able to see themselves differently and who they become in the AI age. And the reason for that is previous technological disruptions and changes were slower. They still allowed a person to exist in exactly how they operated with some incremental improvements. AI could truly replace us. So that requires us to truly shift our identity. If you are a copywriter, well, AI can probably do your job better, faster, more innovatively than you can. Certainly at higher speed, it can work 24/7 to create copy. So there's lots of things that are fundamentally different. Rather than thinking of yourself as being replaced, it's an opportunity for us to shift who we become. And that's both extremely threatening and extremely exciting. It doesn't matter who you are, whether you're technical or non-technical. It doesn't matter how senior or junior you are, what industry you're in. The ability to create a brand new identity that has value and relevance in the AI age is a foundational requirement for anyone thriving in this era. And that is the first building block, is how do I see myself? Who am I in this new era? Number two, we need to shift how we think and how we make decisions and how we go about operating. And so AI can be a fantastic decision-making companion, a strategic companion, But it should not replace the things that are uniquely human attributes, like our wisdom, our judgment, our discernment, our taste, our ability to connect dots of things that aren't just rational, right? That gut feel and the intuition that we bring to the table. So being able to co-create with AI and work, and make decisions differently and think differently become a critical aspect of, anyone in leadership, certainly. So that's the second building block. And the third, which is probably more common across the board, which is shift how you actually do your work. And that's changing the workflows, changing the collaborations and team rituals and things like that. But those three building blocks are, while they exist in some shape or form, even in previous models, the difference is that the urgency, the complexity, and the speed at which all these things need to happen are unlike anything we've faced before. But you got to see yourself differently, you got to think and decide differently, and you got to do your work differently.
Amazing. Thanks, Nikki. And so let's get to Flipwork. How are you going to help us with that? What are some ways that you can help us with that?
Yeah, so Flipwork was really founded on the challenge we've been discussing, which is AI is changing work faster than people can change how they work. And yet companies are investing in the technology, and they're still unclear about how to empower the people to adapt to that technology. And as a result of that, AI adoption is slow and AI ROI is absolutely terrible. And so Flipwork helps companies reinvent how their people think, how they work, how they lead in the AI age. And the approach that we've taken is one of self-empowerment.
Okay.
Rather than it be a change that's, top down or forced outside in, think of it as Deloitte meets Duolingo. It's really about helping individuals in the workplace redefine their identity, learn how to collaborate differently with AI as a colleague or a companion or a coworker, rather than a replacement, or treating it just like an intern that you prompt and bark orders at, but you don't fully leverage. And finally, also the identifying the personal workflow transformation and reinvention. Once all of that is done, we actually build the AI agents that can start to do that low level work, right? Because it's one thing to identify, here's what I can offload, but who's doing that low value work at that point? And there's not a technology that exists to do every single one. So we actually have an AI factory that builds all of the AI agents that can be deployed into the workplace. And with that, the shift that's ultimately being enabled with that is companies go from legacy to AI native, individuals go from fearful to empowered and excited. And the net result is that we are accelerating the pace of innovation, ultimately, that we can leverage AI to be exactly what it was meant to do, which is do more, do better things, and solve humanity's greatest challenges at faster speed.
Hmm. Sounds like a one-stop shop for everything that people are looking for right now. Nikki, help us understand, what kind of organization is this really the best suited for?
So it's our typical company that this would be best suited would be roughly around like 5 to 10,000 employees or more. Because that's where the real sort of transformation opportunities exist. Although we're working with larger companies and mid-size, where we see is anywhere where there's compliance, regulatory requirements, and a lot of people complexities is where this is best deployed. And part of what we're bringing to the table is there is a huge market of change management consultants, transformation experts, even coaches in some cases, that have the wisdom, that have the expertise to help companies. But they too are facing a new kind of challenge, which is they don't bring the tech aspect of it. They're not bringing the engineering horsepower to drive the change. They can provide the advisory, but not the engineering products of the AI transformation. So our go-to-market is very much about also building an operator network of experts in change management and transformation that, in addition to their own expertise, actually are empowered and enabled with our toolkit that they can bring to their clients. That allows them to expand their offerings to the companies that they work with. And through that, we hope to reach an even broader market size through that.
Hmm. Really interesting. And then maybe you could help me understand a little bit. So, just concretely, if I was, the executive who is leading a transformation within an organization, and, I hear about, your offering, your solution and what that looks like, what happens next? What do I need to do? And then how does that get kind of distributed or, implemented within the organization? And is it, and
Yeah.
also, is it continuous forever that I would need you, or is there like a start and end point?
Yeah, great question. So, first off, we begin the relationship with a diagnostic because the most common question we hear is, we know the AI revolution is here. We just don't know where to start.
Hmm.
Well, our diagnostic, the flip factor, helps to identify not only where your AI readiness and AI adoption is, but exactly where you should start focusing that gives you the highest ROI and helps you drive change. So, we start with that diagnostic that also helps them benchmark against other companies, benchmark against the industry, and identify the right focus area. From there, we go into 90-day sprints, starting with the people aspect of helping the people reinvent their identities and their decision-making skills and their actual AI skills in 90-day sprints. During that 90-day sprint, they are supported by a friendly AI change agent called Flippy that
Hmm.
helps them become more comfortable, and it really provides the psychological safety for change because a lot of people are feeling overwhelmed, but they're afraid to hand raise and say, hey, I kind of don't know what to do, because the fear is if they admit they're struggling, they're more likely to get replaced. So it's creating a whole new environment of fear of change that isn't about the change, it's the fear of replacement. And so with Flippy, it gives them this, safe space that they're able to express their challenges, and Flippy helps them reinvent and prepare for the future and build that AI native mindset and skill set. And after that is where we build the AI agents that help to replace the low level tasks with agentic AI capabilities. And so, for companies, we see this as, parts of it that are episodic that help to prepare the foundation, and then really enabling them to be, in this continuous reinvention cycle with Flippy and with the tools that they're able to keep advancing their AI capabilities.
Interesting. And then so creating that safe space is something that makes a lot of sense. I mean, even with the podcast, what I'm trying to do is to help people
Yeah.
give people a way to access and understand new ideas without having to admit
Yeah.
necessarily that that they don't know, and then thus like support their team better during transformation, or bring new ideas to their team during transformation. So that
And you
seems
know what?
really.
That's happening a lot more. I don't know if you've observed the same
Mhm.
pattern, but I've certainly seen that there is an element of a generational sort of aspect to this. I'm a Gen
Yeah.
Xer, and I've seen so many folks in my peer group that are really going through this, uh, what I would call semi-threatened state
Hmm.
of, I grew up in this analog world, right, with dial-up phones and pagers and fax machines, and yet, I'm at the prime of my career while AI has completely changed everything. So how do I kind of, hold on to the trust, the power, the status I've achieved, and at the same time completely throw away everything I know? And that's pretty threatening. And you have to do all of that at such fast
Hmm.
pace. We need these kind of conversations. We need that kind of community in order to have that. But it's equally important for us to recognize the parts of ourselves that we hold on to and the parts of ourselves that we need other tools, either to shed or other tools to add to our arsenal. And I think for leaders and also experts in the field of transformation and change, this is such a pivotal time. We are like the revolutionaries of this era, right?
Hmm.
We are the ones that have to be at the forefront of this, because if not us, then who?
Hmm.
But we also have to recognize that it's equally important for us to prepare ourselves for, this stage.
Mhm.
And a lot of our old toolkit may not be sufficient.
Absolutely. Absolutely. A good hard look. And then, so with Flippy, I'm curious as to what happens with that data. So, one of my conversations with Flippy, where I feel like I'm safe, admitting
Yeah.
that, I'm really uncomfortable with all these changes or AI, everything that's
Yeah.
happening. Does that data go back to, someone, the person leading the transformation, or back to the companies for analysis? What happens with that?
No, everything is completely anonymized because that there wouldn't be psychological safety without it,
Mhm.
right? It is much like therapy or coaching. You have to make that an absolute non-negotiable. That stays within the individual. The parts that are aggregated and help the executives kind of see the patterns is really around adoption increases or skill increases, or even the shifts that they start to see in the telemetry of what is actually getting used. Those are the patterns that help them identify where to continue to keep making investments, where they still have work to do, and really actually see the results of the investment. They're getting ROI in 90-day cycles, that is, with and while achieving specific business outcomes. And even the company level data, when we look at our index across the global markets, we're again anonymizing that because every company has its own unique environment. None of that is shared. These are really important, enterprise security requirements that
Mhm.
you just have to do. And anyone who's working in this space needs to recognize that, sometimes the greatest blessing can turn into the biggest curse. So you have to build the right structural guardrails right from the beginning.
I appreciate that quite a lot. I run some workshops with respect to helping companies to identify the risk and opportunities, around AI, and then helping them to understand that yes, there's tons of opportunity, but there's equally like it's scaled risk as well, and to be able to have good conversations about that. So I appreciate that point. Um,
Well, one of the
yeah.
biggest challenges that we're already seeing, and it's going to escalate even further very fast, is going to be one of trust.
Mhm.
When you already see so much AI slop everywhere, where authentic voices and perspectives are lost with AI generated content, where there's deep fakes, where there's so much stuff that is AI generated, and recognizing that your authenticity, your wisdom, your perspective, your judgment, your intuition, and your voice are what actually make you even more priceless today, because that is where trust is really earned. And doing everything we do, whether as leaders, as operators, or as influencers, trust becomes the non-negotiable currency.
It does. And, as a plug for my previous episode, previous episode for this one, I did an episode recently about engineering trust, because as we build these systems,
Mhm.
every decision is so important. And considering how we can engineer trust into the system is one way to look at it. And that includes, cyber and privacy, and being able to, are we guardians of the trust that we earned, sort of the right to do the things that we're doing, as well as are we looking far enough ahead, which it's a tough thing to do when everything is changing so quickly. But we do have to have somebody who has this idea of stewardship over the continuous kind of experience, and what are some unintentional consequences that we maybe might not be able to avoid always, but that we should be considering as we build the systems of the future. So thanks for that as well. So, just as we look at, wrapping up the show, I want to say that I really appreciate you sharing your approach and what you're moving forward with. I know you've been doing some testing as well of some of your ideas. Is there any interesting data from the testing that you might be able to share with the audience?
One of the biggest themes that has emerged is how people's enthusiasm for AI is also challenging their conditioned beliefs in a much bigger way than we had hypothesized. We knew that, like in most work related to change, mindset matters, and shifting, helping people change the behaviors is a key part of driving that. One specific example that really highlights this challenge is in one of the companies that we were working with, an individual in that company, mid-level manager, and she was very resistant to all of the AI, changes, and yet she was a super user of AI in her personal life, and it was sort of a contradiction. Wait, you use ChatGPT for everything in your personal life. Why are you uncomfortable at work? And she said, because I was raised to believe that I need to keep my head down, work hard, and that's how I earn my paycheck. That when I put in my 8 to 10 hours, 5 days a week, that's how I earn my living. And when I use AI at work, it feels like I'm cheating. It does not give me a sense of worth
Really interesting.
in work, and that was so fascinating to think. And this is not someone who is unfamiliar with AI. They use it for everything personally. And yet at work, they wanted to feel good about working hard.
Huh.
And so think about something like that. And that is just one example of a conditioned belief that
Wow.
AI makes me feel lazy, like I'm not earning my paycheck, that I'm cheating somehow, and I should not have my job. And so I resist it, and I'm going to do things the old school way. Now, the CEO of this company, of this huge Fortune 500 company, has no clue that this is happening. But imagine that multiplied across 50,000 employees. If everyone has some version of that conditioned belief in their heads, and therefore are continuing to do things the old way, you don't even know that that's happening.
Yeah.
And yet you wonder why your technology investment is sitting there unused, because people don't have a sense of worth when they use it. So those are examples of things that when we've helped those individuals cross that chasm and get on the other side of shedding that conditioned belief and developing a new identity and seeing new kinds of value and worth in themselves, adoption skyrockets to 80% in just 90 days.
Wow. And what a positive way to flip that framing, I guess, as well, right?
Hence Flipwork.
Nice. Honestly, we didn't plan that, I swear.
Yeah.
Really,
But that's literally what we
yeah.
discovered was, there are things that are so deep rooted
Yes.
in all of us as human
Mhm.
beings. This person was not an anomaly. We all have these conditioned beliefs from years of learning to work a certain way. And the question is, why is it coming up now when the internet gained mass adoption? We didn't go through that. Well, the reality was that it was a very slow change over 20, 30-year period that we experienced that. When mobile came about, it was again a slow change of 10 to 20 years that came about, right? And you could still exist without adopting it. You could, for the most part, still go about doing things the same way. This is so sudden. Human beings are not designed for change at this speed. It's just unnatural for us. And so it starts to bring up all kinds of things that feel threatening and uncomfortable and contradictory to our core values. When your core values start to get threatened, you will resist it. It doesn't matter how much positive change you can see on the other side. There's something about it that will not be acceptable to your being. And that's why having this change come from within is so important, because no consulting firm is going to be able to drive that change unless there's recognition and awareness and the tools for transformation given to each individual.
100%. I love the way that you think about this, and I think that you've given a lot of people a way to, ground themselves in some ideas for moving forward. And I wish you the best of luck with Flipwork. And do you have any last messages for our audience before we wrap up?
Well, the biggest thing I'd say is this is the best of times and the scariest of times. And when that happens, first of all, we're fortunate that in our lifetime we're getting to experience this. Don't be a bystander. Don't let this moment pass you by being fearful of the change and fearful of changing yourself completely. Step into the arena, play the game and learn how to win it. And if you're looking for actionable strategies and inspiration, my weekly newsletter, Reinvention Roadmap, provides exactly that, because it helps people figure out how can they reinvent who they are, how they think, and how they work.
Really exciting. Thank you for that, Nikki. And I'll make sure to put the URL in the show notes as well. Thank you so much for spending time with us today and for sharing, so much of your thinking. And it's inspirational, really, for people who are really sort of grappling with what could this look like. Thanks for giving us some ideas on that. So, if you're not subscribed to Wired for Change, I would encourage you to subscribe if you're interested in conversations about change and people. Thanks so much for joining us today. That's another episode of Wired for Change.